Here we go.
One time for the one time. It's the family bloodline.
Hey, welcome back, family. It is Jay Glass, the movement. And we are on another episode of the Family Bloodline podcast, where tonight we are going to be watching the actual vice presidential debates. Uh, I got to be honest. I'm not as leaned in on this one as I was for the presidential debates, because I think we're going to get more of what we saw. I I take that back. I think what we're also going to get tonight is I think the audience that have consistently said that they don't know who Tim Walz is, Governor Tim Walz. Uh, I think that they are going to actually be able to hear him present his side of things. See the fervency in which he presents uh, his information, and so because of that, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a great thing, actually. So yeah, it's gonna be it'll be happening in a little bit here. I just jumped on a little early. I'm not going to have a co-host tonight, or maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. I know Deuce got stuck at work, unfortunately, so he won't be on. So it will be me, myself, and and I'll be doing more listening than talking during the actual debates. Now, here on TikTok, you won't be able to see my feed. However, if you want to head over to the YouTube channel, uh, you'll be able to join in and watch in, and also make comments. If you want to actually hop on and give your perspective of what you hear tonight, by all means, be my guest. I've also posted the link on TikTok in the actual chat. So if you want to hop on and be a part of that, by all means, I'll have you backstage for a second, and I will pull you up as soon as I see that you are ready, and we will be able to rock. So I am interested, however, in seeing how JD Vance is going to reply or respond to a direct question in regards to the lie that he created um, about Ohio, the state that he's supposed to be representing. So I'm interested in a couple of things. Like I'm interested in seeing how he's going to spin it and dodge it, or interested in how he's going to actually answer it. Now, if he actually thinks that it was worth the the creation of what he was saying in order to get to push a fictitious narrative, I think that he actually uh, said what he said about creating that story, spur of the moment type, because he was kind of caught off guard by the question and he didn't have a direct answer for it. So again, just a little want to see how that's going to play out for him. To be completely honest, so I don't know. I don't. What are you all's thoughts or expectations for tonight? Do you expect for the VP debates to be legit? You think what are you expecting to see? Are you going to get the answers that you were looking for from either one of them? Generally speaking, the VP debates don't get much coverage. I think we're actually more so looking to see how the candidate is going to balance out the president. and if they'll balance them out, or if they'll say something to the listener to somewhat persuade or coerce, or to get them to lean the opposite way of what they have been leaning. We're pretty close here. We're pretty close to poll time for everybody to go out and vote. I know exactly who I'm going to be voting for, and I definitely have my reasons as to why. I was explaining it to a friend the other night, as to why I'm voting the way that I'm voting. Um, and the bottom line is, I just think that there's only so many there's only so many times we can continue as America to do the things that we've been doing and expecting different results. We've got one old white man in office right now, and I can't see us having another right now. Okay, Cuzzo. So I put your comment up. Thank you for hopping on. I appreciate you. You expect them to start about the issues, but if Vance gets stuck, it will get ugly fast. I have high hopes that they speak about the issues of the people. Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. Once any of those once people and this is unfortunately a common occurrence when the Trumplicans or the Magans uh get stuck in a tight spot, and they don't really know how to answer a question or wiggle their way out of it. They begin to adhere to ad hominem, and they make personal attacks that have nothing to do with the issue that was spoken. They filibuster, they grandstand, and then we get tired of hearing it. And quite honestly, I'm tired of hearing and watching that type of politics. It would be a good. It'd be nice to see and hear a debate that actually gives answers. You want to hear about your local or the economy, locally, housing, the asylum issue, women's healthcare, or the lack thereof. So about the asylum, I don't think Vance is going to answer directly anything dealing with women's health. I'll just throw that out there. I'm gonna just throw that out there out the gate. I don't think he has the gall or the intelligence to do it, unfortunately. And honestly, I think everything will be a stall, especially after reading a lot of 20 Project 2025, which he co-authored and gave a preface to. So I don't think he'll be able to answer it. We'll see what uh, Tim Walz is able to actually to say about the issue, and see if it actually satisfies what a lot of people are needing to hear at this point in time. So I'm watching another screen to see when it's going to actually start. That way I can switch, I can maximize it. It's not on yet, Wanda. It's not on yet. I got the video running in the background, and I'm going to put it up in a little bit. And of course, I'm using the Black Star Network to actually watch it. Um, as a matter of fact, I can actually add the screen right now. Yeah, it's on in about 2 minutes. So I'll add the screen. That way we don't lose out on any of the actual action. Uh, and I'll unmute it right at 9 o'clock. For those who are joining on TikTok, if you want to be a part of the panel, I've posted the link. And you can also catch us on YouTube under the Family Bloodline 5823. That is the Family Bloodline 5823. I will post it down. Oh, well, I just posted the stream. Oh no! Oh no! Those are the nicknames now. Tampon Tim and Lowly Cat Lady Vance about to go at it. I can accept those. I can accept those nicknames. That's pretty freaking funny. That is pretty freaking funny. All right, so for the YouTube link on TikTok, I will post it in the chat right now. Oop, almost messed that up. 5823. The Family Bloodline 5823. There we go. And I'm not going to stay on TikTok too long. TikTok is a drain on your personal computer. I don't know if y'all knew that, but this it drives everything down. TikTok greedy as hell. TikTok greedy than a mother. It tries to drain all of your data, all of it. I don't like that. I pay my internet expensive. You're concerned about the free money that's being given to the asylum people, and frankly, what's next? Yeah, so that does look different in Chicago than it does for everyone else. Oh, here we go, here we go, here we go. I will silence myself and I will bring the volume in. TikTok, you have a little while longer to join us on YouTube, the Family Bloodline 5823, or hit that StreamYard link. Here we go.
Yeah, I got it. You over here pointing out like we got you. We know what you're doing.
Be
You gotta
quiet,
show
bro.
me what's going. I got this. I got this. You sit down.
Oh God.
Folk over here,
Hold on, man.
But no, first,
Hold it.
this like a jam.
Hey, welcome in. Welcome
I'm
in.
fully aware. There's a monitor right over your.
Okay, I'm a let roll and keep talking. Poll is silly. That was to you, Juan. This is looking good. I like a debate when somebody is a tampon. No more bloody debate. I see what you did there, my friend. I see what you did. All right, I'll go ahead and put the volume up on the actual debate, and we'll listen in. TikTok, I'm about to switch you off.
Tonight, with just over a month to go until Election Day, the first and only meeting between the two men who hope to become vice president of the United States. Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota and Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio.
Now, this is likely the final debate of this election cycle, and voting is already underway in 20 states. CBS News polling shows this remains a race either presidential candidate could win. The CBS News vice presidential debate starts now.
Fight for every single vote, and we're going to take this country back.
And we are ready to continue to build the future together.
We're going to turn this whole country red with President Donald J. Trump's leadership.
You know what's at the end of this little journey? Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
This is a CBS News special, live from CBS News headquarters in New York. America Decides, the vice presidential debate.
Good evening. I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News vice presidential debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance tonight meeting for the first time.
I'm Margaret Brennan. In order to have a thoughtful and civil debate, these are the rules that both campaigns have agreed to. Questions will be directed at one candidate, who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
CBS News reserves the right to mute the candidates' microphones to maintain decorum.
Let's see if that's
We
on.
have not shared the questions or topics with the campaigns. The stage
Let's
is
see if
set.
they're actually going
Governor,
to mute mics.
Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers
All right,
remain to
TikTok, we'll
Texas
see
are
you later.
leaving. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, But the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took
Kind of
prisoners.
weird.
Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment.
That is a
But
bit
it's
weird.
not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both
Ola,
of
if
his
those two were the same
Secretaries of
thing,
Defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together, understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the vice president said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this.
Man, shut up and ask a question.
I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit, because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to.
That's not what the question was. I absolutely cannot stand the filibuster about how jumping Jesus. I get that he's doing. Let me not do that. I'll let it play.
Dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence.
That's not
People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration.
That's not true.
What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies,
That's
and
three
God forbid,
lies
potentially
back to
launching
back.
against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe.
Oh, that's
and
why
we
you
should
got to hop
support
on
our
YouTube.
allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump
That,
pulled
that wouldn't
program
happen.
and put nothing else in its
That
place.
wouldn't happen.
So Iran is closer to a nuclear
For
weapon
them
than
to
they
make
were
that
before
decision
because
against
of
the United
Donald Trump's
States.
fickle leadership.
And if they did,
When
we'd be able
Iran
to hold
shot
our own
down
for a
an
bit.
American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted because that's the
Yeah.
standard diplomacy of Donald Trump.
I think a lot
And when
of
Iranian
these
missiles
sovereign countries,
did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches.
you
Look,
wouldn't
our
ruin it.
allies understand
We might laugh
that
at you.
Donald
We,
Trump
we,
is
we
fickle. He will
still
go
welcome
to
you on.
whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible.
That's a fact check.
Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is
Not
as
gonna ask
close
the
to a
question.
nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blamed Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what
That's
the
well,
sequence
that's
of
another
events
lie.
that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective,
The
smart
administration of
diplomacy and
Kamala
peace through
Harris?
strength is how you
That
bring
was weird.
stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major
Right.
conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
That's not true.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you.
They better
Let's
mute
turn now
these
to
mother.
Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160
Yeah, the North
people
Korean
are dead
prime
and hundreds more are missing.
Yeah, he called it.
Scientists say
Yeah,
climate
he
change
called it
makes
Kamala's
these
administration.
hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic
That was a
rainfall.
weird way of saying that.
Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you
Don't
2
do us
minutes.
like that,
Sure. So
Paula.
first of all,
You,
let's start with the
you've been
hurricane because
entertaining you
it's
too
an
much, man. You don't
unbelievable,
want to work this
unspeakable
out.
human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it
Here
was
we
the
go.
last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible. And then, of course, afterwards, to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job. And I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. And Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say, Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake
I
of
know what you
argument, so
meant.
we're not arguing
That's
about
what I
weird
was saying.
science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the
Thank
cleanest
you, Paula.
economy in the entire world.
We're
What have
happy that
Kamala
you
Harris's
found us.
policies actually led to? More energy production in
Yes,
China,
they are.
more manufacturing
That's
overseas,
Mississippi.
more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we
I
actually
feel like I'm
care about
right
getting
by
cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly
man.
the opposite.
Thank you, Paula. I might have
Governor
to
Walz,
send
you
you a
have 2
shirt.
minutes to respond.
Well, we got
You might have to
folks
send
who
us
in
an
agreement
email
as all those things are
to the
happening.
address.
Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy
Speaking of,
with this hurricane,
my
and
planet.
my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together to all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there to that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past.
You did,
Donald Trump
Glitch. I
called it
saw that too.
hoax, and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest
He
in.
lost his place.
What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sets in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real.
I
We've seen 500-year
I don't
droughts,
think I'm
500-year
fast enough to
floods
fact
back to
check
back.
the
But
amount
what
of
they're doing
lies
is
Vance
adapting, and
has
this has allowed them to tell
already
me,
begun to
look, I
tell.
heard
And he,
corn, I heard
off the top of
soybean
my head,
growers
I can
win.
four
We are
times,
producing more natural gas
four
and more
times
oil at any
in the
time than
first
we
two
ever have.
questions.
We're
He
also
lied.
producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming
Oh,
an energy
Diddy. Hey,
superpower for the
speaking of
future,
Diddy,
not just the current.
that
And
guy
that's what
got some new
absolutely
allegations
makes
he's
sense.
facing. Might
And then
talk
we
about it
start
tomorrow.
thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that
All right, let
President
me
Trump
try
has
and
called
fact check.
climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now,
That's
something
foolish.
Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on
Yes.
solar panels that are made in
Well, what-
China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United
are in
States of
Minnesota.
America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by
your
the
time
climate.
is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil, but the folks know, and like I said again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year.
Everything that I'm
massive
looking up
flooding
as
next
far
year.
as
They
Trump
understand that it makes
plan,
sense. Look, our number one export cannot
not
move
looking good.
topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how
Second
do we
Trump term,
respond to
so
that,
the
we're
shifts from
thinking
fossil
ahead on this.
fuels,
And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to
energy
weather
policy
some
that
of
Trump
these
and
things.
Harris
The
agree
infrastructure
on,
law that was passed allows us to
environmental
think about
policy that Donald
mitigation
Trump
in the future.
administration by
How do
Rich
we make sure
Trump,
that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that
how
we're
Trump
seeing
energy
more and more
policies
of?
to set
But to
America
call
back.
it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that. And an all above energy policy is exactly what
I
she's
can
doing,
agree to that.
creating those jobs
I
right
can
here.
agree to that comment.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters.
Trump is looking to expand
Senator
fossil fuel
Vance,
production.
your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more
Vance is lying.
specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis
Yeah,
because
they did.
Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all
Jesus,
of Donald Trump's
Trump.
border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall,
Yikes.
re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country.
Okay.
What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally.
And
I
that
think you
fella
start
is
with
correct.
deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good
I'm going to
day's
type
work.
something.
And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficking. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of the specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things?
Yeah,
regarding
well,
children?
We might come to Norway, Polar. Hi, and I might move there, man.
And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history. 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still
We're
more
going to type
work
another
to do.
factoid
So
in,
let's go
in the
back to
chat.
this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this. And that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it.
And he lied.
2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable,
they
it
treated
was
the
laughable.
quote-unquote
So
opioid
that's where we're at.
epidemic
Pass the bill.
a lot
She'll
different than
sign
what
it.
happened in the
Governor, your
80s.
time is
Right.
up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children even if their kids
Ray
are
Ray and
U.S.
Pookie.
citizens. You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace.
Well,
And
why
it
didn't
has to
why
stop.
didn't Trump
Look,
fix
I
it
think
when
what
he
Tim
was
said
actually
just
president?
doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a
He didn't
record
have
number
no
of
goddamn
illegal
border
crossings. We had a
policy.
record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for
Actually, yes,
president,
yeah,
or a few
I
months
stand
before,
corrected on that.
she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94
There is no
Donald
such
Trump
thing as a border
executive
czar.
actions that opened the border.
Americans have
This
never
problem is
appointed
leading
or
to
had any
massive
position in our
problems in the
history
United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care,
that
schools that are
uses
overwhelmed.
a
It's got to
czar.
stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix
Damn.
this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this. And
Jesus,
Senator Vance, and it
what's up,
surprises me
Bolo?
on this.
You better get
Talking
your
about
ass
saying I will create a
inside, man.
storage to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's
I've been
consequences. We
waiting
could
for
come
this.
together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a
Well, let's
solution,
get
it
something clear.
becomes a talking point.
Vance
And
is
when
the
it
one who
becomes a
actually
talking
started
point
that
like
crap.
this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim,
Governor, Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our border czar, Kamala Harris, has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the
I'm so
border
tired of
illegally,
it.
you've got to
These
stay in
bastards.
Mexico,
Nah.
you've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You've got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in
How do you feel
Springfield,
about
Ohio,
that part,
are the
Michelle?
American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable.
Somebody
Victims of
finally
blame.
said it. Jesus
This
Christ.
bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. I don't talk about that
Hey,
a lot.
Sheila, thank you
But
for hopping
Matthew
on.
25:40 talks about
Definitely
the least amongst us you
appreciate
do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected
Well,
status.
Margaret,
Nora?
but
Thank you.
Senator, we have
of
so
course,
much to get to.
Margaret,
Thank you.
Yeah, mute his
Getting
ass.
out of the
debate-
economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the
Mute
rules
him.
were that
The
you guys weren't
economy-
going to fact check.
Mute
Since you're
him.
fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on
Jesus
as an illegal
Christ.
migrant, apply for
Jesus.
asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10
They
years.
said that they
Thank
were
you,
going to
Senator.
mute.
Interpretation of illegal
They held the
immigration,
right.
Margaret.
They had.
by
They.
Thank
They
you,
said that they
Senator,
were
for
going to do it.
describing the legal process.
laws
We
and
have
Kamala
so much
Harris
to get
opened up
to,
that
Senator.
pathway.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much-
the books since 1990.
Oh,
Thank you, gentlemen.
I'm about
We
to mute
want to
their
have-
ass.
app has not been on the books.
Where's my mute button? There. Oh, okay. It's
Gentlemen,
muted.
you're-
They did mute him.
The audience can't hear you because
Perfect. I did that. Sorry, everybody. I wanted to catch up.
Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing.
I'm so
It
happy
costs
they muted
$5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then
Oh,
getting
right on,
businesses
Zoe.
off the
That's
ground.
super
The
dope.
law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a
Thank you
philosophical
for the
difference
stars, my
between us.
man. I
Trump
absolutely
made a
appreciate
promise,
that,
and I'll
bro.
give you this. He kept it. He
Man,
told folks from
I'm
Mar-a-Lago,
giving you
he
a
said,
shout
"You're
out
rich as hell, I'm
about
gonna give you a
that.
tax cut." He
Go
gave the
send
tax cuts that
stars.
predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a
1,000
20%
stars.
consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it. It would increase inflation and
Thank you.
potentially
Thank you.
lead
Thank you
to
for
a
the stars,
recession.
bro. Thank
Look,
you for
this
the
is simple
stars.
for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do. We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best. More people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan
Uh-oh.
and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for
$5.8
you.
trillion.
How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And what
Who got
she's
lotion
actually
on,
done
though,
instead
Roland?
is drive the
It ain't
cost of
cold
food
enough for them to have
higher by
lotion on yet.
25%, drive the cost
They
of
need a
housing
couple more
higher by
months.
about 60%. Open the American southern border and make middle class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address
Oh,
middle class
hey,
problems,
Wawa.
then she ought to do them now. Not
No,
when asking
what
for
Vance is
promotion,
saying is
but in the
absolutely
job
not
the
true.
American people gave her
The vice
3.5
president
years ago.
doesn't have
And
the
the fact
powers
that
that
she
he's
isn't
trying to
tells
make
you a
her
lot about how
make
much
it
you can
seem as if
trust
she
her
has.
actual plans.
He's
Now,
lying.
Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have
That's not true,
PhDs,
Ira.
but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom. Because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and
That's
to boot,
not
peace
true.
and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say, look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim, admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so
Oh,
different about
okay. Sorry,
Donald
bro.
Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense
No, we're
wisdom
not.
so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this
See,
country.
he's stuttering. He lying that Botox forehead
Kamala
on.
Harris done for the middle
Right.
class.
Well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession. But 10
Dang,
million
Zoe. Thank
lower
you, baby.
percentage since the Great Depression.
Again?
9 million jobs closed on
3
that. That
times.
was day
4.
one. Whether it was
Oh,
the
so,
Infrastructure Act or other things. we did. Now,
man,
you made a question
so
about
blessing
experts
us.
said this. I've made a note of this. Economists
Appreciate it, man.
they can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same
Exactly.
thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years?
Wow.
Damn.
President. That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's
Wow.
bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about
Oh,
that.
shit.
They
What's
said
your
if we shipped
favorite
our
polar?
industry base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic
I'll be
issue.
sitting for
I've
the
got 3
foreseeable
beautiful little
future.
kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom,
We're
which
not
is what
going
Donald
to
Trump
stop
governed
by
on.
Senator, your
listening
time
to
is up. Governor Walz, can you
experts.
address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if
Hmm.
you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm
Yeah,
not
Zoe.
things overseas, but I understand that. Look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading
What?
partners. That's something that we believe in.
What
I
is
think the thing that,
happening?
most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with
Oh
China.
my
So
God.
the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in
Right
agreement with
on,
him on this.
Zoe.
I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had
That's crazy.
undercutting
Zoe
the
out
right
here
to
blessing
the
us.
bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were
Oh,
willing to ship it
hit
over,
them hearts
and
on
we saw people
Facebook.
profit.
Send them stars.
Folks that
Right
are
on, Zoe.
venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
No, that's a
show
gross
that he
generalization.
did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough
Just
job
call
here
him a liar.
because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to
Get it
pretend that
over.
Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've
No,
got
he
to
didn't.
pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you
God.
simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was
Also,
raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could
Most
put
of us are
food
raised
on
by
the
women,
table in our
dumbass.
household.
The
I
fuck?
know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope
Oh,
we have
so
a
you want to put us
conversation
back
on
into slavery?
healthcare then.
Senator, Governor,
Please.
thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice
Damn,
the
Zoe!
president hears
Hey, I'm gonna retire.
making consequential
Cut it out.
We want to ask you about
Zoe
your
over here
leadership
plugging
qualities.
us.
Governor Walz,
Man,
in
you better
Hong
hope
Kong
BB
during the
better be
deadly
getting
Tiananmen
permission from
Square
BB for
protests in
that.
the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August
Try.
of that year.
Mm.
Can you explain that discrepancy? You have 2
Yeah,
minutes.
well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a
Yeah,
passionate young
Douglas.
teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, to be able to do that. I came back home and then started a
Activate a
program
star
to
party.
take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams,
I don't
we
know
would
how to
take
do that.
dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where
I
I was
said
at.
send stars
They-
to trigger
Look, I will be the first to tell you,
celebration
I have
before
put
time
my heart
runs
into
out.
my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to
Hey,
Congress
really
for
appreciate you,
12
Zoe. You
years.
coming through, bro.
And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me
I
to governor
understand your
twice.
skepticism,
So look,
Paula.
my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything. Many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be
But didn't he run from the
praising
draft?
Xi Jinping about COVID. And I
Didn't he
guarantee
what?
you he wouldn't start a
Didn't
trade
Trump
war that
run
he
from
ended up losing.
being
So this
sent
is about
to the
trying to
military?
understand the world.
Yeah, he
It's
did.
about trying
I
to
thought so.
do the
Okay.
best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand
My
what
curls
is
are
my
falling.
commitment, whether it
When
be
you got
teaching
locks that are
children
heavy,
good
the curls don't
whether it's
last
being a
long.
good soldier or as being a good member of Congress.
Right
Those
on.
are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was,
We
can you
appreciate you, Zoe.
explain the
No, just
discrepancy?
all I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate Donald Trump unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020.
Yeah.
But the Washington Post reported messages last week in which
Paula, are you flirting with me?
Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism.
Yikes.
You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear?
He
You
won't.
have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now,
I wonder why he
pointed
won't
out the
tell Trump to do
messages
the
from
same.
2020. Margaret, I've
He
been
just
extremely
apologized.
consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration the first round.
I'm trying to figure
Regardless
out
who's
what he
doing its
remind me
job. I
of.
strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator,
Broke ass
that Congress is
Wolverine.
not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for
No,
senators
that's
and
not it.
congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I
I
think
got
we
it.
could have done so much more if the Republican Congress
Wow.
and the Democrats in Congress had
It's
been
a
a
good
little
guy
bit
dog,
better
the Chucky
about how they
dog.
govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't
I
actually
can see
govern.
that.
And I want to talk about this tariff issue in
I can
particular,
see that.
Margaret, because
Oh, what's
to
going
just
on?
accuse this of being a national sales tax.
Third party
Look, the
achieved.
one thing, and you're not, probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing
Wow.
that Joe Biden
So thank
did
you.
is he continued some of the
Fred,
Trump tariffs that
thank you for
protected
hopping on.
American manufacturing jobs.
Fred,
And
welcome.
it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration. It's the
Having a
one
star
issue where
party on
Kamala Harris
Facebook.
has run away from Joe Biden's record.
Eric
Think about
Gutierrez,
this. If
welcome.
you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you.
Oh, come on,
Now to
Chris.
the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely
Backyard.
fine. Yes
Back.
or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's
I
mind.
have a friend from there. They're
Donald Trump
beautiful
put
women.
this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he
Come on,
tells us,
Jeff.
oh, we send it to the states. It's a
Yeah, here we
beautiful
go.
thing.
Show Cuzzo.
Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing.
Let's
A
go.
young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duval, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather.
Wow.
Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs
So
don't make a right.
again,
There is no
man.
right in this.
So plugging
So
us.
in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. The Project 2025 is going to have a registry
Yes.
of pregnancies.
Yeah.
It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business.
Agreed.
But those
Gotta
things are
close
being
the statement
proposed.
out.
And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world.
Mm.
This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in
Exactly.
healthcare.
I agree, Polar.
We trust
Thank
women,
you.
we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create
Make
a federal
abortions great
pregnancy
again. That's my
monitoring agency?
MAGA.
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And
Man,
I
so
grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate
All
those
right, Zoe.
pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options.
Thank you, Zoe.
Where's your
And,
wife
you know,
at? Is she
one of
approving
them is
these
actually very dear to
transit?
me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I
Don't
love
get
you.
in trouble on our
And she told me
account.
something a couple years
Same.
ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to
Yes.
protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the
Oh,
things
we
that
don't
Donald
trust
Trump
you.
and I are endeavoring to do.
I have to
want
I have
us
to
as
mute
a
this for a
Republican.
quick second. Just as a reminder, JD Vance is he's written a piece a Project 2025 where it's heavy on Christian nationalism and banning women's right to abortion and everything in between. Everything that he's saying that he talks about when it comes to abortion and any of that, if he's trying to speak positively, he is flat out lying. He's already put it in black and white. He's endorsed Project 2025.
Messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked, and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life
We like us.
and your rights
Yeah, I know all the bad words.
control your own
I even
body
make some of
is
myself.
determined on geography? There's a very real chance
Yeah,
that Amber
bro.
Thurman lived in Minnesota,
Amire.
she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade.
I know.
When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same.
Santos.
Donald Trump is
Olivera.
trying to figure out how to get
Why
the
not?
political right of this. I
Why-
agree with
why
a
not?
lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did during when I was running for Senate in 2022 talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the
What's
state of
radical
Ohio,
about
we had a
abortion?
referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible.
That's a good
because
question.
we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom
Thank you.
to make your own
So I
choice.
give him
We know what the implications are to not do that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true.
Sandy, thank
We
you.
also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala
that's
Harris
all
is
we
making the
ask.
case,
Shoot.
to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator.
May I respond to that?
Good
First of
question,
all,
though.
Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And
Because they don't want their friends
you're free to
seeing
disagree
them
with me
taking
on
their
this.
daughters to
Explain this to me. But as I read the Minnesota law
care
that
of.
you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law,
James Ferguson.
it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched
That
late-term
is.
abortion. That is, I think,
That's
whether
not
you're
true.
pro-choice or
That's not how the
pro-abortion,
law is.
that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns
David
to
Hendricks.
violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is
What's
written
the lie?
to try and make a
Vance,
point, that's not it
by
at
the
all.
way,
What was I
sir.
wrong
This
about,
was-
Governor? Please tell me, what was I
That
wrong
is
about?
not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But
this,
how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, that's been misread, and it was fact checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this: just mind your own business. On this,
Wow.
things worked
That
best
part.
when Roe versus Wade was in place.
That part.
When we do it
Unless you got a
retroactively,
uterus, you have nothing to
that
say.
doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota,
Yes, no, but
they get
name
meals,
something in
they
America
get
that is
early
in
childhood
business, brother.
education.
Name,
They
name
get
something in
healthcare.
America that is
So
not a business.
hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget. Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's
What?
not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
All right.
We go to
Let's
mute.
discuss what has happened.
Yeah. So out the gate, and I started counting, and then I decided not to bring it down a notch. But Vance began to tell alt facts or anti facts right out the gate, and I don't want to see their faces on here right now. That's
Mm.
throwing me off. There we go. Yeah.
We'll definitely have to have you at a cookout. Everybody in this family cooks for real, and we throw down for real. So
we do. It's good times.
we throw down for real.
So I did see Tim Waltz glitch once, at the very least once. I think
I think he just lost his thought, but that happens when, in the heat of the moment. It wasn't like a complete. It wasn't a Biden glitch. I put it that way because I'm gonna be
Right.
honest. It wasn't.
Yeah.
one of those. But this debate is a lot more.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
it's
say it's going. It's like it's even on both sides. It wasn't a complete wash like the presidential debate was.
right. And I think somebody's going to have to get pressed sometime soon. Somebody's going to have to get pressed.
But I
Yes.
mean, as far
Have-
as like it's just as far as the as far as like abortion and women's rights goes, that pretty much does it for me.
Okay.
That does it for me.
I can agree with you on that. I don't think that it's in a lot of our best interest to
I just
to
feel like
continue
if you don't have a vagina, you should not be making decisions about one.
and I'm okay with that. Hey, it's okay to look at me all the time. I'm a pretty good looking guy.
You are a handsome cousin.
You can look at me, Pola. That's all right. You'll be okay. I took my hat off for you.
He
Yeah, I
said you
got
have
that,
hair.
man. Absolutely. I
It's
do
some
wear
real hair.
I
He
do
said,
wear
you
hats
have
a lot.
real hair.
Yeah,
I'm dead.
yeah.
No
Real hair.
Jillian over
Yes.
here.
Yes, I do. But
That's
but
hilarious.
I think that's where Vance is going to get tied up at, and especially tomorrow when people begin to fact check what he's agreed to and signed up for in
Mhm.
Project 2025, which is absolutely insidious. It's an
Which
insidious.
is crazy to me because he's saying he's not denying that he's a part of this document or agrees with this document,
Right.
but Trump is saying he has nothing to do with this document.
Yeah.
So how can your VP have something to do with it and you don't?
Yeah. You got to pick a struggle. America isn't pro-vagina. It isn't. America.
No, it's not.
A lot of Americans, unfortunately, are pro-vagina control, either out of jealousy or simply out of a form of misogyny. And
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's a weird thing to me, and I don't agree with the removal of a decision that should come, especially if it's simply steeped in a religious movement, a religious belief, or how you've perceived religion to
Like
hand this down.
America is now a place of
Not
several
too.
religions and several beliefs. And if you're in America, all of that should be protected, correct?
Yeah, yeah. And as a reminder, there's a separation between church and state for a reason, and this is one of them. This
Like
is this is
like it's crazy to me.
it's not it shouldn't go down in this fashion, because what I keep telling people is, and the debates are coming back on, and I say this and be quiet, but your deity's consequences or heaven is for you, not for everybody.
Mhm.
Oh, let me bring it back.
All right, here we go.
Epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you
Here we
oppose
go.
gun legislation that
Mhm.
Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and
What
legislation
makes
to
it scary,
ban certain
Polar? Just
semi-automatic
curious.
rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you,
I bet it
earlier this
is,
year,
Paula.
for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of
Ah,
involuntary manslaughter and
ooh,
sentenced to 10 years in
Donna,
prison.
thank you for
Do
watching.
you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yes.
Well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous.
They
But
are.
look, I want to just sort of speak as a father
Guns are
of
dangerous for
3
kids,
beautiful little
period.
kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are
And
affected
yet
by
we're
this
buying
terrible
bulletproof
stuff.
backpacks
And
for
we
our
do
kids
have
to
to do
hide
better.
behind.
And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about
Yeah,
this
I
epidemic
agree
of
with you,
violence.
Paula.
The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartels. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to
So
increase
how about we
school
just have
resource
gun
officers,
control?
because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Luis,
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your
I
biggest nightmare. Look, I
no,
got
so
a
we
I got
are
a
not saying
17-year-old, and
our brother
we
Mexicanos
witnessed a shooting at a community
guns
center
at all.
playing volleyball.
That's
Those
not
things
what we're
don't
saying.
leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and I here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I
Oh,
agree
no,
with that.
my kids
But
are fine.
that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools.
Finland?
They don't have this happen,
They do
even
not.
though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country.
Yes.
There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's
I want to go
not
to Finland
infringing
also.
on your Second Amendment. And
I
the
want
idea
to
to
go to
have
Finland.
some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense.
Oh, come on,
Kamala
Jeff.
Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there,
Oh,
do
yeah.
you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go when we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills? They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that
I'm gonna
shouldn't be
need you
that
to come on
difficult.
here and talk
You can
about that,
still keep your
Michelle.
firearms and we can make a difference. We
I need
have
to
to.
hear
If you're
about
listening
that.
tonight, this breaks
Oh,
your
I'll
heart.
be right back.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I
I
hope that he's
appreciate
doing
you saying
okay.
so.
Christ have mercy. It is awful, and I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is okay. First of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools, we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but it only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was the NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves.
Mm.
And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues, making sure folks have health care and all that. But I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns. And there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think
What's
there's a
happening,
capacity
Nicole?
to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our
Long
children. It's a
time no
priority.
see.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret.
Or talk
Thank you,
or
Nora.
hear.
Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent.
Mm-hmm.
There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz,
Okay.
the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's
2
not
minutes.
handing out. We have, first, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more
Okay,
affordable.
man,
And one of the
welcome.
things, as I said, this program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead.
Gloria.
We in the state
Carolina.
invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, one of the, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing,
Mhm.
but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is You don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it
Yep,
fair. Now, look,
definitely
you're
gonna be
gonna pay it
taking advantage
back
of that.
and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we've put some of these things in. And we're
Hey,
implementing
Nikki,
a state program to make sure
what's
we
going
get some of
on,
that down
cousin?
payment assistance. We get it back from
So
people
America
because here's
isn't a
what we
purely
know. People
capitalistic
with
country.
stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing
There are multiple
have their
different
kids
social
able to be
programs
able to
that,
get to
that actually
school.
help us.
All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And
Corporate
that's the
bailout
thing that I
is one.
think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough
Get it
naturally
right, sir.
affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that
Hey,
base.
Nikki.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising?
Yeah,
And what
let's check it.
part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this
Pass
country,
the bill.
which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens if you lower energy prices, as Donald
So
Trump
if you want
says,
to hop
drill,
on,
baby,
by all
drill.
means, my
One of
brother,
the biggest
hop on
drivers
and
of housing
talk
costs,
about it.
aside from illegal immigration, is think about it. If a truck driver's paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, yeah, Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that
No,
aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national
OGP has
parks. They're
that
not
kind
being
of power.
used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in.
Well, of course, that's not
migrants,
true. And again,
that
you
it's
have the
affecting
facts. I
housing
guess we
prices.
agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's again blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask though on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people have federal
Oh,
lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota
oh,
doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a
it's
lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I
hitting
worry
on
about
that
this
one.
as
I
someone who
gotta
cares
be
deeply
honest.
about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water.
Brothers,
These lands
oh,
protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of
you on
us.
mute, brother?
And
You on
again, this
mute?
is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I
Yeah.
think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, you Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor,
Where's the
your
study? Sorry.
time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills
Show
down
that
on
shit
the
now.
connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a
Hold it,
federal
it's fire.
administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build
Well,
homes who
Chicago,
aren't
well,
able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Waltz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity.
he didn't
But the
have to meet
thing that has
everybody,
most
whatever.
turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to.
All
You're
right, that's
passionate
right.
about the housing crisis, I can tell. But Nora?
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. I think it's very simple common sense. I think it's Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress. You're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill, but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do. But I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it.
He ain't got
he
them.
did it successfully the first time.
He's got concepts and ideas.
That's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare
My
state.
nephew had called.
Clinic, medical
And my sister told me to tell everybody hi.
We understand
Nope.
healthcare. It's
It was
why we're
Crystal
ranked
this time.
first on
Hey,
affordability
Chris.
and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under
Well,
Kamala
guys,
Harris,
what do you guys think about their body language?
they have the before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the
Like,
first
I
thing he was going to do on
I
day
feel like
one
Tim
was
is
to
more desperate to
repeal
explain
Obamacare.
things
On
than
day
Tim's.
one, he
Tim's
tried
more
to sign an
chill.
executive order to repeal
wait,
the
there's
ACA.
only one Tim.
He signed on
Uh,
to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but
in
lost to the
advance
Supreme
is
Court. And he
wait,
would
JD
have
thing.
repealed the ACA
give me
had
that
it not
advance
been for
though.
the courage of John McCain
So,
to say
so
no.
what I'm seeing, like in the
Now,
facial
fast forward, what that
expressions
means
and the
for you
body
is
language is that
lose
like
your
Tim is a
pre-existing
little bit
condition.
more
If you're sitting
tensed
at home
up,
and you got
a
asthma,
little
too
bit
bad.
more
You're a
desperate
woman,
to
probably
deliver
not.
the message
Broke
with
your
the
foot
facial
playing football,
expressions.
might kick you out.
And
Your
and
kids get kicked out
and
when
the
they're
other
in high
guy,
school.
the red tie
Kamala
guy, I
Harris
forget his name.
negotiated drug prices
He's
for the
more
first time
on the
with
conservative
Medicare.
reserve with his
10
body
drugs
facial
that will come online,
expressions.
the most common ones that'll be there.
I
But
mean,
look,
I'd
this issue,
look
and when
chill
Donald
as
Trump
hell
said,
if I knew I was
I got
coming
a
to the
concept of
fly.
a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never
That,
given
that'd
me
be
that.
my demeanor.
But what Senator Vance just explained
And
might be worse than
if
a
I was
concept
trying to sell
because
somebody
what
on
he explained is
for no, I'm telling
pre-Obamacare.
the truth.
And I'll
To
make
hear
this
out
as
the
simple
truth.
as possible because I have
Be
done this for a
disgraceful.
long time. What they're
Okay.
saying is if you're healthy,
Like
why
I
should
see
you
the
be
guy
paying
with the
more?
blue tie and he's like
So what they're
moving
going to do is
more.
let
He's
insurance
more like
companies pick who
more
they
like
insure because guess what happens? You pay
moving
your
the
premium, it's not
shoulders,
much.
moving the
Very quickly, they're
hands,
not going to have to pay out to you.
moving the
But
head,
those of you a little older,
pointing
gray,
the finger.
got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and
Yeah,
enhance the ACA.
Voss does sound
Senator,
more
thank you.
prepared.
Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place
Look,
right
look,
now
right
to
away.
protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance
And you know what I'm
marketplace
noticing?
function a
If
little bit
I'm
better.
the
One
subconscious
thing
level of
Russia
America,
said is
he's got
actually
the
not
haircut
what
of
would happen, and the reason
the
that
good boy
Obamacare
haircut,
failed
the
under
guy
Governor
that's,
Waite
you
is
know,
that a lot of
church
young and healthy
guy,
people were
that
leaving
whole
Told you he looked like
wages.
a good guy,
Donald Trump
dog.
actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again,
it's the
something that
young
these guys
alpha
do
versus
is
the
they
old
make a
alpha.
lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president,
Not an
all of these
alpha.
terrible consequences are going to ensue.
Not
But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher. And he
James right away
saved
with the
the
truth.
very program from a Democratic
they
administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
Mhm.
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the
Yeah.
question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought
We
tooth
definitely
and
see a lot
nail
of it at my
saying,
job.
well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then
So
what
you think
happens
the
is
individual mandate's a good idea?
you shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people
Man, that's a
know
burn. I
they
gotta give
need
him
to be
that.
on healthcare. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market,
Health
when we
insurance
help
is.
people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying healthcare once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works.
Ooh,
We
another
can continue
burn.
to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank
You-
you.
you-
Margaret?
Can I
We're-
address that?
I apologize. We're
Uh-oh.
out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss. Margaret?
Let's talk about families in America.
Oh yeah.
There is a child care crisis
Sure.
in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents.
Bro, it's
Mm.
$400 a week to take care
You've
of one
said
kid
that
on
if
down the
Democrats
street.
win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California.
Yeah, it's
Those
a lot.
companies provide paid family medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family medical leave. You have a child, you and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better
Army
start.
does
The
it all.
family works better. We stay in their employers. We get more
Bro,
consistency
John,
on
so
that.
what's
So
happening?
Kamala
They
Harris has
actually
made it a
extend
priority. We
$30
implemented it in Minnesota,
We
being
and
had
we see
we
growth.
have paternal
That's how
time
you
on my
become
job,
a pro-business
and
state.
it's
But the
paid.
negotiation on it, and here's the issue: those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some cases, that means
I ain't not mad at that.
on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those
Man, he's
tax
really
breaks
making the
to the
case for
wealthiest.
the
He's
Blue
willing to
Stars.
say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them.
Yep,
As far as
that's true,
childcare
Michelle.
on this, you have
The
to
family
take a look at
bloodline.
both the supply and the demand
Okay.
side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take care of our children
Hope you didn't get in
or
trouble, Zoe.
our parents
Plugging
No,
us.
no,
who
no.
have the least amount of
They'll
I'm
money.
spend the
actually,
money.
We have to make it easier
I'm
for
actually in a
folks
good
to
beat
be
right
able
now
to get
with
into that business
with
and
family.
then to make sure that folks are able to
Okay.
pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota,
It's
and
a
I'm
great
still
week.
telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family medical leave and health benefits
I'm
will
glad you
enhance our
found
workforce,
a
enhance
reason
our
to stay
families,
with
and
us.
make it easier to have the children that you
Good
want.
reason to
Hey,
stay with us.
Governor,
I'm
your
not
time is
gonna
up.
lie.
But
This is
Senator,
run
do
by
you
this is a
support
woman
a national
household. She
paid
is the
leave
boss.
program? And if
We
so,
know.
for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of
They,
all, Margaret, a number of my Republican
and this is
colleagues and
crazy.
some Democrats too have worked on this issue, and I think there is a bipartisan solution here
Yeah.
because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean,
They,
look,
and they
I
figured
speak
it
to
out in
this
the UK.
very
They figured it out
personally
in
because
Finland.
I'm
They figured
married
it
to
out
a
in
beautiful
Norway. They
woman
figured it out
who's
in
an incredible
Sweden.
mother to
Canada.
our 3 beautiful kids, but is
Figured it out.
also a
Well, I
very,
mean, we
very
did
brilliant
just send like $3
navigator,
billion to
and I'm so
Ukraine
proud of her.
for
And
maybe
being a working
potatoes. I don't know
mom
what's
and
going on over there.
the
Not
advantages of my
potatoes.
wife is
Ah,
I hear
extraordinarily
they
difficult.
farm really good
And it's not
potatoes.
difficult from a policy perspective. She had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the
it's one
family
of my
model they want. A
brothers.
lot of young women would like to go back
One
to
of my
work
brothers.
immediately. Some
Yeah,
would like
New
to spend more
Zealand,
time home
absolutely.
with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs
It does.
only go to one kind of child
It
care
does.
model. Let's say you'd like your church
So
maybe
why not
to
look
help you
nothing
out with
alike?
child care.
Just
Maybe you
do
live in a rural area or an urban area and you
no,
want
it's
to get together with families in your
You know what
neighborhood
would be
to
good
provide
for
child care in a way that makes
the
the most
American
sense. You don't get
public to
access to
have
any
somebody
of
to
these
be like
federal
catch
monies.
their lies
We
and be
want to
like
promote
one
choice
lie,
in how we
two lie,
deliver family
3
care and
lie.
how we
You know what I
promote
mean?
child care. Because
Yeah.
look, it is
So then
not
that way
acceptable.
people could be like,
And,
oh,
you know, of course, Tim and I have been
at
on the
the end
campaign
of
trail a
the
lot for the
round,
past 7
this
or
guy
8
lied
weeks.
more
And one of the
than
biggest
the other
complaints I
guy.
hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to
Project
put on American
2025
families. We're the only country that does
talks
it. I
about
think we
that
do
too.
a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on child care as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this.
Wow.
President Trump recently said, as much as child care is talked about as
It's
being
not a big
expensive,
deal.
it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in.
Mm-hmm.
Is President
Well,
Trump
this is gonna
committed
scare
to
everybody
the
trying to have kids.
$5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking
Now
out
you
a
want to
lot of
defend
money
him when
by
you were clearly
penalizing
against him.
companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave
No
laborers
problem,
and
Nikki.
then
Thanks for
ship their
joining.
products back into our
Thank you
country and
for joining,
undercut the
Nikki.
wages of American workers.
You can
It's the
switch us on
heartbeat of
YouTube
Donald
and put it
Trump's
on your
economic
TV.
plan. Cut taxes for American workers
Oh
and
snap!
American
I'm gonna do
families.
that.
Cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but
Bro, you want to see
penalize
myself on
companies in
TV?
countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, childcare options that are
That's
viable
ridiculous.
and workable for a lot of
I feel like
American
that's a
families.
lie.
Can you clarify how that will solve the childcare shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the childcare shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide childcare options for American families, because the
Real,
reason
like
it's
that's not true.
right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit
Oh,
for
wow.
children under the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you. And
What's up? Can I get
this is
12
the
G's
biggest
for
issue
real?
tonight. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive.
I'd be
And let's
happy to
be
get
clear,
mine too.
whether it's 5,000 or 6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because
Okay.
we got out of the
Yes.
imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people.
I'm
I don't
thinking
think
about
Senator
doing it
Ransome
myself.
and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another 4,000 on the family and taking less.
Yes.
So not only do they not get the money to pay for
Yes.
that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy's growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits
Oh,
contesting
shit.
the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and
Welcome
other
in, Lynn.
Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every
I agree with
state
that.
in the
Hey,
nation,
Ma.
Oh, that's a good.
and Democrats,
That's a good idea.
certified the
Yeah, I
2020
agree.
election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, they hitting.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis
What?
caused by Kamala Harris's policies.
Oh, he didn't want to answer the question.
Groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look,
Okay.
what President Trump said is that there were problems in 2020,
No,
and
it's
my
not.
own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember,
No,
he
it's
said
not.
that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately,
Oh,
we
snap.
have
The other guy's taking notes. He's mad.
Harris-Biden administration.
Wow.
I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to
Exactly.
democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz
J6.
want to talk about. It is the threat
It's that
to censorship.
J6 that he's
It's
trying
Americans
to avoid.
casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans,
son.
she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think
Nah,
that is a
son.
much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in
Scare
this country.
tactics.
4 years in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two
Welcome on,
lifelong
Glenn.
blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with
He
me
didn't like
Donald
that
Trump
either.
on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue.
He's
But we're
mad.
united behind the basic American
Here
First
comes
Amendment
the
principle. We want the debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues.
Okay.
And that to me
That
is
that
a
was
much
that
bigger
one's a
threat
big
to
one.
democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate. I think there was a lot of commonality here, and I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator. But
me too, man.
There's one though that
It's
this
very
one is
cordial, isn't it?
I think we need
No
to tell the
insults?
story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some
Yeah.
with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police.
Oh my God, bro. Cue in the
And my son
Papalero.
was standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence.
You're talking
Pence
about
made
the
the right
dog.
decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting
Wait,
this.
didn't this guy
And a
try to
president's
put all
words
these felonies
matter.
on Trump?
A president's words matter. People hear that. So
Yeah.
I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this.
That's a
that
powerful
when this
message.
is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for
I don't know why it's so
Democratic
funny
leaders
when
to
it's like,
say
look,
that Donald
Tim,
Trump is a unique threat to
settle
democracy,
down a little
and
bit.
he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll
Right.
have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said
Ain't
that
that
Donald
shit
Trump
down.
had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin
It's
because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of
No.
the election, I'm on
Kid didn't look very happy
I
there.
want to say, Walz
I'm
He
not
said he's on
accepting.
board, but what about your running mate?
I don't buy that.
Yeah. I'm not accepting that answer.
January
from him.
6th was not Facebook ads. And I think of revisionist history.
It's just it's not Facebook.
It wasn't.
Understand.
I know, but it's
point.
just like so crazy
Issue
how
was that
they're playing
happened.
these
Donald Trump
word
didn't do it, and
games.
all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've
Yeah.
seen that brought up.
That's
I
true.
just think for everyone tonight,
Ooh, shout out
I'm
to
gonna
Florida.
thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to
That
hear.
part,
And I
Michelle.
think there's a
That
lot of
part.
agreement. This is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did
Holy
Oh,
shit.
God.
censor Americans from speaking their mind in
That
the wake
was
of
no
the
bueno.
2020 COVID
He's not
situation?
going to answer that.
Has she tried to-
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation.
Ooh.
Kamala Harris wants to use the
threatening or
power
hate
of
speech.
government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds.
Jesus.
That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats
Yes,
and
they are.
Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's
Tim's not happy
persuade,
there.
argue about ideas, and then let's come
They
together.
don't even want
after.
to teach real
Can't
history.
yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the
masks.
governor does have the
Exactly. That's what I'm
floor.
saying,
Fire in
Michelle.
a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of
How,
every
how come it all
Senator,
comes back to Facebook?
For 1 minute to
Please.
respond to you.
Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate
I'm
out
not
there
Zuckerberg.
who refused, and now again, and this I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the
David,
election.
hello.
This is not a debate. It's not. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision
There we
to
go.
certify that election, that's why Mike Pence
The
isn't
fly
on the
Mike.
stage. What I'm
Yeah,
concerned about
exactly.
is where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows
Yeah,
he could do
yeah,
anything,
that's right.
including taking
That's
an
right,
election,
Michelle.
and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So, America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your
Mm,
time is up. Thank you, gentlemen.
mm.
We will be right back with both of our candidates.
Wow,
The CBS News Vice
gloves are
Presidential
off.
Debate continues.
All
I
right.
think where am I? Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
I think that round just went to Walsh. That
Same.
last ending. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, do you concede the fact that you lost the last presidential? And he's like, I will not answer that question.
And he didn't answer. They're
didn't.
not going to answer that question ever.
I feel like if
don't-
you would have said, clearly we lost because you guys took office and now we're
Right.
about to be in World War III.
I mean, if anything, he could have said that.
Yeah, because you're looking to accountability, like for whatever reason, their big scare that they're pushing is that he's a tyrant and that if he gets elected one more time, he's going to be the king of the United States.
Oh my God.
They're pushing that. They're pushing that agenda heavy.
Who, Trump?
On the blue side, they're pushing, that if he gets elected, he's a tyrant, and that we're all gonna lose our civil liberties.
Yeah, obviously, Michelle, he wasn't that quick on his feet.
Yeah, but I do want to make it clear that former President Trump did say that he would cancel.
I'm gonna lay down on y'all.
Yeah. All right, he would suspend part of the United States Constitution. He's okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
He also said that he was when asked a question of if he would be a dictator, he said for essentially at least a day, right? So I know that it's kind of exaggerated the way that it's being pushed, but even with the exaggerations, removing the exaggerations, rather, he did admit to and say things that are actually anti-democratic, that are very anti-constitutional. He said it out of his own mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So they are running with it, but he did say these things.
Yes, I remember that day specifically when he gave that speech and basically said, calm down, guys, because we need a rally. And then it got out of a swarm scenario. And then when people started climbing the walls, we've never seen anything like that in our lifetime. It was like, I don't even know how to say it because I don't want to offend anybody, but it looked like a bunch of crazies. Thank God there wasn't no brown people there. I felt like it was just old white folks, but
so there was, because some of the Proud Boys are brown. But what I'll say is, in a room full of bees, all it takes is for you to swat one time for them to get upset.
That is so true.
And that's unfortunately as the president at that moment in time, that's exactly what he did.
Right,
And then
Michelle? We couldn't even get no tiki torches for the dog on little while we wanted to throw.
right. And
Bought all
then
them tiki torches up.
his inability to respond promptly to end it said his silence spoke tons, unfortunately.
Yes.
When he should have been out front, like directly telling people to go home, not waiting and hanging out and watching shit. No.
Michelle, they should have went to Diddy's house.
Diddy got 1,000. Well, he had 1,000 of them. They gone now.
I got 2 bottles.
Wow. Hey,
I'm
you know what? I should have bought some baby oil stock market for real. Because now everybody's thinking that that's the thing. Honestly, you know what? Sorry, let's get back to the subject.
Shit, I'm scared to buy baby oil.
Dude.
I'm just
Yeah,
buying
you
regular
gotta keep that skin moisturized. You better get them oils and butters.
Oh my God.
lotion, and we keeping the AC on. It ain't finna be hot in here nowhere.
You better get them oils and butters.
You know
Look,
what's crazy? I know it's kind of like
up,
I
it's
feel
back.
like that whole the Diddler, the Diddy Steam, it's a crazy distraction for everybody.
All right, we back, y'all.
All right, go ahead.
So Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody.
You know what I think people are going to like about this guy? He's kind of
From Bernie
sweet.
Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift and a whole bunch of folks in between there.
You know what I
And
mean?
they don't all agree on everything, but they are
I can't.
truly
I don't.
Adonis.
They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you that that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something, not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know
They should have gotten this
who
guy to
Donald
be the
Trump is.
front runner
He
of the
told
blue
us, and
ticket.
Maya Angelou said, believe him when he
Oh,
told
not
you.
yet.
His first inaugural address talked about American carnage. And then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful.
Well, Mexico has a woman president, guys.
That does
Today.
resonate with me.
Awesome.
He said Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you.
You will
Senator
humbly
Vance, your
get.
closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And
Did he
one of
call
the issues
him
we didn't
Walt?
talk about was energy. And
It's
I remember
Walt.
when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets
Well,
pretty
he was
cold
in
at
the
night,
Kamala
and because money
brain.
was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks
If
to
I get
Kamala
5,000
Harris's
for each
energy
shorty,
policies. I
I'm
believe
voting
that
for
whether
whoever's
you're
giving
rich
me
or
5
poor,
stacks
you
for
ought to
each
be able
shorty.
to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's policies.
It's a lie, man.
Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris
That
does when she
putting in the
stands before the
fentanyl was a
American
low
people
blow
and
in there.
says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed.
Yeah,
She's been
absolutely,
vice
Ty.
president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. Whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for
Exactly,
participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder, there are just 35 days until Election Day.
35.
Please get out
Are you
and vote.
kidding?
And for all of us here at CBS News.
All right, folks, that was the CBS News Vice President.
All right,
Goodbye.
bye, Rob.
I did not know. I did not. 35 days for real?
Yep, November 6th, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm still like I'm still feeling like it's September, but it's October. You're
Today's
right.
October the 1st.
October the
21
1st.
days until my birthday.
I'm an October baby too. Hi.
Yay.
Libra
Hey.
season. But wow, guys, this debate was more substance and kind of
Do you feel
kinda
like you got more out of
respectful.
this one than the presidential debate?
Yeah, the presidential debate feels like WWF. You know, with the whole with the kind of like bullyish, and it kind of looks odd because it's a white man attacking, you know, a woman of color. So it looks odd to me. It looks kind of like, I don't know how this is gonna move the people. I feel like, look, I'll be honest.
But
I
if you
feel like,
watch the debate, she definitely held her own, and
yes,
he didn't run over her at all. She ran over him.
but I feel like America. Let me ask a question, guys, and this is a sociological question. Do you guys feel like America is more racist or more sexist?
That's a weird
Both.
question. So, yeah.
Because
Definitely
what
both.
I feel like wherever I drive around here, people right now is Kamala Harris all day.
Oh, yeah.
I do feel that Kamala Harris is winning.
Kamala.
I do feel that the narrative is going to Kamala because of the whole aspect that I think right now people are more racist than sexist. You know what I'm saying? Like we feel like that Donald Trump is definitely a
Why does he
racist.
think you Latino? You're not
Huh?
Latino.
I know.
No,
I
I'm
know.
talking to Fat. What is that?
The hell?
You're not Latino. You black.
Oh, but
Uno momento, hermano.
but
Mexicano, Boricua, Colombiano, Dominicano, Boricua, Borena.
there you go. Yeah, no, he's definitely Latino. He's definitely a part of the culture. But I think wherever
No
because I'm
wars
doing
under Trump. What about a civil war right on our soil? Facts.
when I'm doing Uber and I just have subtle questions, the majority of the people dislike Mr. Trump. And this is here in the Chicagoland area. So I
Yeah.
mean it's no coincidence, but right now people are kind of like that whole aspect that a woman president feels very, very cool. You know what I mean?
Forward movement, and she has forward movement ideas. And I think that America is ready for it. We're tired of the same old, same old. We're tired of the old white man trying to, what do you say, make America great again. We're over that. It's time to make what we think is great.
It's definitely this debate. I was like, oh, I see why they like Mr. Tim. Mr. Tim was definitely.
This is the first VP debate I've ever watched.
I think he's done the best job out of everybody in the debates. You know, because he sounds very, very next door.
Yeah, and I think more happened during this VP debate than what I anticipated. Notwithstanding the lies or the spin, the art of the spin that happened with JD Vance, and even I didn't anticipate Waltz actually essentially taking ownership of his mischaracterizations or the lies that he told about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually a refreshing thing to hear from somebody on that type of stand on that platform. And it's not an easy thing to do. I don't the thing again that has continuously tipped me over the edge is the simple question of whether or not former President Trump lost the last election.
Did you see this comment? U.S. needs a Chicago mayor to run for president. They know how to make a buck.
No, y'all mayors up there. I mean,
you guys haven't checked in. People in Chicago are mad.
I know they be doing too much up there.
What is happening in Chicago?
Like the whole immigrant thing. Okay, look, the block we've been struggling for the longest, right? The block is hungry. In comes in the immigrants and they get all the free 99 stuff, which is granted, like they come from a place that's really bad. But for the people that are like coming here and they're getting visa cards, they're getting, shelter, they're getting food. They're basically getting the stuff that when we were immigrants, when we came out here, we were like, put on your boots and get to work.
Mm-hmm.
So the message to us here, the coalition of business Mexicans, they're actually telling Congress, please give us the appropriate working Social Security so that people cannot be on this free 99 thing. Like actually get those guys to work versus having them flooded on the streets. Because this is what's happening. The immigrants are coming. All due respect to all of the immigrants, always, right? I'm an immigrant. I'm not bashing immigrants, but what I'm saying is that
accountability was wrong.
When they're flooding society, and the first thing that they do is get in line for the people that are already kind of struggling. The people that are struggling are saying, "Hey, you're not even an American. Why are you in this line?"
Well, let me take a quick pause right there, real quick, because I don't disagree with the approach of Americans should be taken care of first, especially in our country. I don't disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
What the question that I have is when dealing with these things at a state level, right? Who has ownership of that? Is that the Biden-Harris administration, or is that your local government and governance?
It should be the locals. You are correct.
And so if your local government isn't taking care of the population the way they're supposed to be, you all need to vote them out.
Mm-hmm.
That's what needs to happen. Right.
And these when they have the conversations with the people, I've never seen the I go on sometimes on YouTube and check them out. The people are waking up where like people are fighting for the littlest thing, which before people it was us fighting, but now it's like us fighting them versus us.
Sure.
And so that's where like a lot of money's coming in to the state because there's a lot of charities that are helping both sides. I think what I'm really trying to say is that America has a boatload of money. We should not be fighting for scraps.
I don't think we got as much money as people think we have. I'm gonna be
we're a credit-based society.
Yeah.
We have a lot of
from my perspective is that if what people see right on TV, we're programmed automatically. We're sending all this money because there's a war going on. Fine, we got to make sacrifices. But for the people that are like really struggling, health issues, the people that are not getting that extra raise when they really need it, and then taxes are going up, everything is super taxed. It feels kind of like I thought we were supposed to get help a long time ago. Like Mr. Tim just said, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. He's bringing out the Great Depression quotes. Whoa. It's not a good look to be bringing up. If we have, the Franklin D. Roosevelt, the guy that brought the New Deal, which was essentially the 40-hour work week thing to be respected for workers, and then to be not fully free until 1967 with the Civil Rights Act to protection of workers. I think what we're really talking about is that we need to upscale those rights of working men, people, working families. Overall, your buck is now 5 cents.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, right? But I think that there has to be an understanding as to how inflation works, who it's presented and pushed by, and why it happens, and various different facets, right? Again, I've said this on the podcast, and I had been saying it for years. That the chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, said that this was going to happen. I said it, and I said it. He said that the Feds were going to raise. He said that the Feds were getting back to market stability. He said that everything that's happening now was going to happen, right? And instead of Americans looking and understanding what he was saying and the why behind it, we waited and we began to get propagandized on the lies from politicians, right? Now the politicians are making the boogeyman out of immigrants be the boogeyman.
As always.
Right. And not just that, but now they're trying to, instead of it being a Biden-Harris administration, as Vance tried to push tonight, it's a Harris-Biden administration, that fictitious narrative. Never forget that Congress owns the purse strings to
that is so crazy.
Right? Don't forget that. And that's what we do. Also understand and remember that the corporations that we're pushing back against are the ones that Americans actually have an issue with.
Whoa, bro, that's so, oh my God, bro.
Not our neighbor.
Not even that. I wasn't even thinking about that, but you are 100% whoa, right.
Yeah, it's a load of bullshit. The way the politicians play the art of spin and begin to blame the economy and gas prices, the price of eggs, cheese, and milk on other politicians. When these are corporations that are flourishing in a free market and having their way with the American citizens' livelihoods, that's what's happening.
It's almost you're what. In other words, the people that are taking the money, it's the fat cats.
Yeah, of course.
The politicians are paid spokesmen to be like, hey, be afraid of this while this is going on, and you're distracted with this is going on. But meantime, you know, the fat cat, he's got his pockets full.
And I can't even, like, it's hard for me to explain and express it, because Americans, generally speaking, don't have a healthy understanding of economics, not just local economics, but American economics, and not just American economics, but global economics. They don't have a healthy understanding of how connected war is to big business globally. They don't have an understanding of going and looking at the actual financial standings of corporations that even during COVID have been making billions of dollars per quarter in profit.
Wow.
While we are the ones that are suffering. There's such a huge disconnect with the financial intelligence of the average American person that they are readily available to find out who a scapegoat can be and who they can blame this shit on, instead of actually looking at the people that are nailing these things down. Like everybody and every politician in office, minus the Supreme Court, is there because they have a section of constituents that put them there. If y'all don't want them there, get their asses out.
But the money's too good. Right now, it's probably like the best time to be in political business.
Yeah, that they are burning books right now, because so that you don't know.
For sure.
So
you know what? But this is actually I saw this thing, because we're all living on microcosms, right?
Sure.
We're all living in these little universes, and there's other people doing certain things, and other people are not. You know, certain people are clamping down, other people are being liberated, and we're all now watching in real time because of this mystery of, you know, social media. We're all being closer connected in real time. And what I saw is that now, when we have these leaders that potentially are trying to do something good, they turn into bad guys. But once those bad guys leave, there's a vacuum of, you know, there used to be a person that used to have that chair and used to do business or stand on business. But now what we're seeing is what you're saying. These seats are actually sponsored by corporations, and the people that are making those decisions are corporation-based value systems, meaning that the person, it's not going to be the worker that's winning, and it's not the average citizen that's winning. It's actually entities that the money goes all the way to the top. The directors get the money, the CEOs get the money, the owners get the money. Everybody else is, tagging the line. And that's what you said. The credit card business right now with 30% to borrow, and people are like, it's so easy to be like, hey, I'm hungry. I'm gonna go ahead and swipe this so I can get my value meal.
Yeah,
I'll pay it down the line because I'm hungry now. And everybody's on that quick gratification. Nobody wants to work. Working is hard, and working with people that don't respect people. We're becoming more inhumane, right? Because it's all about the bottom dollar. It feels like we're being sold a dream that is no longer active. And that's why people are so frustrated.
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Love you too, Cuzzo. Thank you for hopping on with us. Appreciate your support and your comments throughout the night. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Hop back on with us whenever you get a chance. Sweet dreams.
Sorry, James. But I think that's really what I wanted to say about that. Tonight's show, I really love having you guys having me on, and that support that I gave you guys earlier was just a little love token of what you guys are doing and celebrating what you guys are doing, because these conversations, James and Wanda, like, they're so important. Even if it's like on a small, minute scale that what we're doing it right now, technically we're not, because I'm in Chicago, you guys are in different part of geolocations, and little by little it's tracking where people want to have these conversations, and be free to have these conversations without having judgments. Because if we have 30 days, then we have no time to waste. We have to be like, yo, you voting? Yeah, who you voting for? Okay, it doesn't matter, just get yourself out there and vote. Because either way, it's not just the presidents that are being voted. It's a bunch of seats. And you've said it right now. Sometimes the most powerful people are the Congress and the senators. They're the ones that create those movements. And that's all I have to say about that.
I appreciate you. Zoe, Juan, you got anything?
No, just vote. Be heard. You see, I didn't got the bonnet on. It's about my lights going out.
Hey, that's why I wouldn't even finna waste the time with the final thoughts. We didn't gave them. Yeah, it is time to go to bed. It's time to go to bed.
The bonnet is on and the lights are out.
So, well, listen, everybody, thank y'all for coming out. We absolutely always appreciate y'all, and thank you for all the support, Zoe. I definitely appreciate it. Much love for that.
Thank you for come check in. All the comments. Love it.
Yeah, tune in with us later. We're gonna be on. It looks like we might be on for the majority of the week doing some different stuff. I mean, goodness gracious, a lot of people keep asking me to do this. So we'll see what happens. I'll give you Wanda. I'll shoot you in dirty text tomorrow. Let y'all know some of the requests that I've had here lately.
Yeah. Did you see the what I just sent?
I did not. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, this is y'all getting nighttime me now. The voice is gone. Everything.
You know what? It's the best time of the day. When you have a productive day, you get the best sleep.
Yep.
Yeah, let's do it. So
was a long. I had a dentist appointment, no cavities.
Hey.
So, yeah.
All right.
You know, I be pushing the oral health big.
Show you right. So, hey, y'all could have been anywhere else in the world, but y'all just decided to hang out with us, and we greatly appreciate it. And with that being said, thank y'all for coming out. God bless, and
good night.
One time for the one time.